pleasure tonight to welcome our candidates running for the Board of Education. The candidates are here to tell us tonight a little bit about themselves and for us to be able to make evaluation of what we're going to do on November 5th, because I'm sure everybody's going to go out and exercise their right to vote. So we appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We'd like to thank our planning committee, Tiffany White with Clark Schaefer Hackett, Connie Emerson with Concord Counseling, Rebecca Vasquez Skilling with Otterbein University, Rob Twitchell with Information Control Corp, Christine Dilley with Parent Teacher Council, and we have 3 students that are with us tonight. If they want to raise their hand, there they are in the back. You'll be able to see them shortly, but thank you. We have 2 men in the truck that is graciously hosting and being our signature sponsor tonight, and there are coffee mugs and keychains and some pens in the back on my left-hand side. If you'd like to take one of those with you, help yourself. Compliments of 2 men in the truck, and of course there's a brochure in the back as well about their moving business. You see the TV cameras here in the audience, and that is Otterbein TV that is here with us today. And they will be taping this, and it will be airing on WOCC TV, and that is through Time Warner, AT&T, and Wide Open West. It will also be a link for a YouTube account that you'll be able to watch it on your computer. And for example, that is up from last night. Our YouTube account is up today on our chamber website. So I'm hoping by the end of the day tomorrow, this will be on the YouTube, and then the following day, so it'll be probably Thursday, late afternoon before it'll be ready to be on WOCC TV. And then of course, they'll have a schedule that'll let you know when it will be aired between now and November 5th, so you can kind of pass those times around. You'll find information about the candidates' background and their platforms in the guide that we have both for school board and the city council members. And the candidates, therefore, are not providing an opening statement because that information is provided to you. Additionally, you will find information about the candidates if they wanted to bring brochures or business cards or whatever. We've asked for those to be back on the right-hand table in the back of the room. So if you wanted to pick up something with the brochures, you're welcome to do that. I'm not sure who all brought stuff, but if it is there, that's where it'll be. Your questions should be submitted in writing. The committee has prepared some questions. However, we welcome questions from the audience. Our Otterbein students will be floating around. Just raise your hand, and if you don't have a question card, we'll get that for you as well. And then you can give them a card, and it'll be passed along to Rob and Connie over here, who will be reading them for legibility, make sure there's not duplication of questions, and that also it's not pointed and directed to one particular candidate, because all of our questions will be asked of all candidates. We can't promise that we'll get through all the questions tonight, but we're certainly going to make a strong effort to do that. Cabot Ray is going to be our moderator. Of course, he is wrapping up the 6 o'clock news right now, and we knew that. And he's going to be here. His goal is to be here at 7. And when he starts, hopefully everybody knows him. He's a news anchor for Channel 10, NBC TV. Or Channel 4, my goodness. Oh, wait till I tell him that. Oh, Channel 4, NBC News. And then he'll have to kind of quickly leave tonight because he's going to go back and be on the 11 o'clock news. So we were very appreciative for him to be joining us tonight. My name is Janet Davis with the Westerville Area Chamber, and I'm just getting you kicked off, and we'll probably do the first question together. And then as soon as Cabot gets here, we'll be rolling it over to him. We have a timekeeper in the front here. In fact, we have an Otterbein student and one of our committee members. And candidates, there will be 1.5 minutes given for each question. And there will be a piece of paper that will be raised for a 30-second warning, and that will happen to be a blue card, and then a 15-second warning, which will be a yellow card. And then when time is up, if you're still going, there'll be a red card that will say stop, and they will say, please stop. We ask that you be respectful of the candidates and of any responses tonight, and sometimes some things will create an emotional response in us, and we ask you to hold back applause, comments, whatever, until the very end when we can give everybody an applause for stepping forward for the way these people have to run for public office. So with that, I will get started with our first question, candidates. And we're going to start right in alphabetical order. We'll be starting with Nancy Nestor Baker first. And then each question that we ask, each person down the row will answer it first, and then we'll wrap it around. So each person will hopefully get to a question to get to ask first. and candidates. For your first question, as you know, your Chamber of Commerce requested to have requests for proposals be conducted last year. A few were completed. What did you learn from reviewing those outcomes, and how or will you support future plans to evaluate more cost-saving comparisons through RFPs within the school operations over the next 2 years?
Several things come to mind as I think about this particular question. One is the larger role of the chamber and the school's relationship. The RFP process really brought that into focus and actually helped us to once again become the type of partner with the chamber that we always need to be. The RFP process itself, I think, was extraordinarily helpful to the district. I think that it led to a great deal of possibility as we look ahead to the next bargaining unit timeframe, as we look ahead to the ways we can provide services more efficiently. I think that it was also very interesting to follow that process and to realize that there are some severe gaps in knowledge and information between both school and community. And as we looked at that process and handling that process and developing the recommendations through that process, it gave us some very clear guidelines on where to go, not only with the efficiencies in operations, but also with the connections with the community. I think that what we'll see is taking those RFP approaches, identifying the recommendations and the components that make the most sense, and you will see those coming to fruition within the district and across our classified staff in the years to come.
Well, I thought the RFP process was a really great one to for the school to do and to get created and started. The things that we learned, I think we learned some of the busing things. We're pretty spot on with those, but there are some other areas that we can improve upon, is what I think the RFP process saw. What we'd love to do is see it continue. We've asked for even more RFPs, some more of the requests for proposals from our legal firms specifically. We believe there's a lot more of room for improvement within the legal fees that were being paid, and also within our healthcare. So while it was a great start, I think we can continue further with the process, and it will make us leaner and a better, tighter organization to also have for our district.
Okay. I think the district started out well trying to meet these conditions. And I think first off, the most important thing to do is to stick to your word. So we need to go back and constantly review and make sure we are meeting these conditions. They did do a good job at looking at competitive pricing. I would like to say they did a great job. Also, our teachers and administrators gave back $8 million, which I think is a significant amount. In addition to that, the last part of the piece is reinstating some of our programs that we got rid of. So that's the fun part now. We did all the cutting, and now we get to imagine what the future can look like here in Westerville. And we're in the position to do that.
Good evening, everyone. I believe that it was a good thing to look at the request for proposals. I believe that also we do need to continue to look at those. One of the things that we need to consider is how can we share services, possibly with other districts. Also to continue to dig in deep, to look for ways that we can improve efficiencies, and also to restore some of the cuts as was mentioned earlier. And we need to continue to strive first for putting the students first.
One of the biggest things that I bring to the table is I want to be a board member that listens, one that interacts with the community, and I think the RFP process is a great way to engage folks, find out information that otherwise we may not get or understand if we do things in a bubble. Coming from 35 years in the business, in my business background, RFPs were always required because if you don't know what you need or if you don't know what the need is, how can you fix the need? So anytime you engage people with transparency, that was another thing I wanted to bring out. Anytime you engage people through this kind of a process, you create a level of transparency, and with transparency comes trust. And I think that's one of the things in my campaign and on my platform that I also bring is that I want to remove the divide and the contention that exists in the district today, and this is just one step towards that by providing true transparency.
The RFP process that we went through last year, in the first half of last year, was a great process. It was an opportunity for us to look at cost items within the district, figure out whether there's opportunities to do better. We've been very focused on that, throughout my tenure on the Board of Education. Whether that was back in 2004 when we brought the state auditor in to do a performance audit to look for those type of opportunities. But we've been very focused on opportunities to, reduce costs so that we can focus on delivering the highest value education, which is what it's all about. Our mission is about delivering education for our students. And that's what we really need to focus on. So we need to go ahead and find ways to, reduce costs in the, in areas that are not a part of our direct mission and move forward in that direction. And I think we've done it even in recent years. The RFP process was good because it gave us information that we can use going forward, information that will help us in negotiating future contracts. But we've used it in other places as well. One of the other candidates talked about health insurance. When we go out to market every couple of years with an RFP on health insurance to make sure that we're bringing the best value to the district, and that's one of the things that we do on an ongoing basis. So I'm very pleased that we did it. I'm pleased with the learning. I'm pleased that it will help us if we choose to do that again in the future. And that's what we should always be looking to do, is to learn, take best practices, and move them forward.
My experience with the state in large multi-million-dollar RFP bidding processes has been of value to me in what the school district does here. I totally agree with the process. It's been, I've seen it give great efficiencies to the state at the state level, and I know it does here at the board of district as well. In reviewing the contracts, I see where we have saved money, and I agree with it. So I think we need to continue to rebid current contracts, look for new ways to bid things out for cost savings, and ideas as well. There are a number of areas in the health insurance realm where we can use ideas that don't cut the benefit rates for the employees, but they do save money. So I am all for it, and I will support it as a board member.
I think this is really exciting. I am really grateful that you all are here. I'm really excited for these scouts to be here. I know this is off question, but I'll have plenty of time for the question because with the name Velardo, I'm at the end, and I'm going to say ditto to a couple of these people over here. This is really good. Thank you for turning out for this. The RFP process is something I live. 30 plus years in the nonprofit world, I never have enough money to do what I want to do. And yet we always strive for excellence. I never have enough money, so I'm always RFPing. An RFP, in case you don't know, and some of you might not know, it's basically what you do as a homeowner. You get estimates, you get references, and you find out what is the best bang for your buck. That's what an RFP is. So whether that's our custodial services, whether that's our ground services, whether that's health insurance, we need to figure out, are we getting the best bang for our buck? For 30 plus years in the nonprofit world, that's what I've tried to do. That's what I will be about on the board. And the one thing I would add is, when you RFP, you need to make a hard decision sometimes. And you need to be willing to do that. And I'm willing to do that.
Thank you. Our next question, and we will start with Mr. Burgess to respond to this question. A Board of Education's job is to set policy. What do you see as your most pressing policy issue over the next few years, and why? How would you address these?
I think our pressing policy issue is really around the quality of our education, and we've got some great policies there. And I think it's more of standards, and making sure our standards are built into the policy, that our teachers are given the weight and the power and the authority they need to become great teachers. We talk about what you hear maybe being called teach to the test. We've got people teaching to a standard, and yet they're so focused on that they don't have time to really to go to what the kids really need. We'd love to see a way to address policies that give our teachers the standards, the ability, the rules, the structure, if you will, within the policies to loose them up, let them become the best teachers that they were trained to be, and give them that authority and responsibility to be so. So really the policies I would really love to see focused on the most are around the education that our kids are receiving and making sure that our teachers are loosened up to do the best job that they can.
It's a good question. Set policies. I think the first thing we need to look at when we set our policies is raising the bar. We need to talk about, right now, 40% of our high school graduates are taking remedial classes when they go to college. So maybe when we look at setting policies, we should refer back to that and raise the standard for our children in this district. And I think we can do that.
I think we have a lot of policies that are already sufficient. We just need to follow them. We need to give support to our administration to be able to do those, and we also need to hold them accountable when they don't. As I've gone through, talked with folks, there have been several things that they've seen bullying occur on buses. We talk a lot about bullying, but nothing. Several parents have iterated to me that they feel like nothing's actually being done about it. I had a personal experience myself where two mothers kind of took the law into their own hands and confronted my daughter at a transfer location. That was completely inappropriate. I feel they probably did that because they felt like they weren't going to get much help from the administration, and I believe that's quite possibly true, because when I sat down with the principal, I certainly was not satisfied with the action that I saw myself either. So I want to see us take the policies that we have and follow through with them.
Like Rick, I'm going to say ditto, 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 ditto. But also want to add a little bit of thing that's more near and dear to my heart, and that is I witnessed a couple years ago that we did a policy review, and absolutely we need to do that. We need to make sure that the policies we have don't get old on the vine and then they're no longer applicable. We've got to review those on a timely basis. And one of the policies that I'm really excited about is technology. I'm a technology nut. I'm an eye nerd. You can call me all those things. But I am really deep in technology because our kids are in an information age. We're not in agriculture or industrial. We're in an information age. And when they graduate, there's expectations going to be put on them that they know technology, that they're technologically savvy, that they know how to do things that when I graduated 30-some years ago, that I didn't know. And one of the ways that I think that we can improve the policy or improve our kids as they graduate is to make sure we have policy that says we need to stay current with technology in the classroom. We need to make sure we put the tools, 30-second warning already, wow. We need to make sure we put the tools in play so that when they graduate, and Carol Friend said this at the last meeting, when they graduate, if they decide not to go to college, that's okay because they have the tool sets to go out and go after a career. That way, or they can go to college and use that tool set. So, in closing, I want to say I've seen it in my own family. My 8 and 10-year-old, I got to stop. Doggone it! I wanted to tell you about that. See me afterwards.
So, we've got in this district, as Mr. Edwards mentioned, that we did a policy review a couple years ago and did a full update, which was good because it got us to the right starting point. And now we can focus on dealing with the legal issues as they come up. But at the end of the day, I think we do have a very broad set of policies. And if you get into the policy manual, and I know a lot of folks don't spend their time, unless they're maybe trying to get to sleep, reading the policy manual, you'll find that they're very broad and they cover a lot of things. There are obviously places where we can go to targeted areas. Technology is a great example. But I think that where we really need to focus is on the curricular needs of our students. One of the things that the board has talked about right now, we're about ready to kick off, is a strategic planning process. And that strategic planning process is a opportunity to bring the community in to engage on the topics that are important to our community so that we can focus on the curricular needs and curricular options that our community expects, looking across the community, whether that's students and parents, asking the businesses, asking the folks who have been through our schools, folks who don't have kids in the schools, bring them together to understand what the expectations are of the community on a go-forward basis. We did this in 2005 and had a great success with it, and we codified where we were then. But it's time to redo that. It's time to take those ideas, bring those ideas back in, and make those part of our policies so that we're really moving forward on the needs that the community is articulating.
As Kevin said, the school policies are broad and cover quite a few things. But in my 5 months of walking the streets now, knocking on doors in this campaign, I talked to a number of parents, and I think the key policy issues that we have to address are school safety and student discipline. There are many people who are moving their children out of our public schools or even moving to different districts because they're dissatisfied with the sometimes unequal application of discipline and the policy of school safety. School safety is a big issue now because of what's happened nationally. We've even had a local incident that was close. It wasn't a safety issue, but it could have been. So we need to focus on those things for our students, for the parents, and the school in general.
It is the school board's responsibility to set policy, but it is also the school board's responsibility to make sure those policies are adhered to. We cannot just be a rubber stamp and create a lot of policies that are not adhered to. So that's the first thing I'd say to you. The second thing I'd say to you is, for the last year, it's really like a year and a half, I've been a part of a group called the Community Engagement Committee. The Community Engagement Committee has gone to all of the schools and gone to a number of civic organizations in the community. And what I'm driving at is that one of the primary policies that we do not have in place is to build bridges between the community within the schools and the greater Westerville community. There is too much misinformation, there is too much misunderstanding, and we need to be about building bridges. We need to be about building coalitions. We need to stop all the negativity, and I would suggest to you that one of the primary policies being community building would raise the level of educational excellence within our schools, because the community would be more willing to plug in and we would be more willing and able to plug within the schools. So I would say community building and educational excellence need to be high priorities.
I actually really enjoy policy, and this is, so I would read the policy book, always have. In fact, during my earlier time on the board, one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was spearheading the entire recreation of the board's policies during that time frame and setting the stage for the regular policy reviews that now can go forward. I really enjoy it. When we talk about setting policy for the board, we have to make sure that we understand the difference between policy and procedure and culture. Policies set the stage, create the parameters, lay the foundation for what needs to happen within the schools and within the school district. Sometimes you set procedures that go with those policies. Other times the expectation is that that happens within each building and within the structure of the district that you've created. The culture of the district, the policies support the culture, the policies help enlighten the culture, the policies help move the culture. So when I think about what kind of policies I would want to see implemented in this district, number one, I'd want to see what kind of policies we can strip out, because I think we have too many and they tend to get a bit wordy, and nobody follows your policies if they are wordy and unattached to the day of lives and students and staff. I want to see policies that support innovation. I want to see policies that support the education of the whole child. I want to see policies that support the high achievement of our students and our staff. And I want to see those policies in place and actively utilized on a daily basis within the schools. Yes, it's our responsibility to make sure they're followed. It's also our responsibility to make sure they're good.
I am not Janet Davis, for those of you, but I would like to be at some point. It's awesome to be here with you. Sorry I was a little bit late. We had breaking news. I don't know if you heard, the Ever Ready Bunny was arrested today, brought up on battery charges. So that's why I'm a little bit late. But I'm really glad to be here because certainly I am a big believer in Westerville. Look at this turnout. This is incredible for this event. That's a real tribute to the schools and a tribute to the people that want to see the schools progress and continue to move forward as they have. I actually went to a Longfellow. I'm a product of old Longfellow back in the day, before it was a charter magnet school, and I had 3 children that went through schools here. So I certainly have an interest in what's happening here as we move on forward. We're going to continue to, I did want to recognize, though, a couple of special people, because there are a couple of current school board members that are with us tonight. Carol French. Carol, where are you? Nice to see you, Carol. Merci beaucoup. And also, one of our great friends and great servants to this city of Westerville over many, many years, and I'm so glad to see you here tonight. Cindy Crow is here with us tonight. A very special person. Good to see you, Cindy. Thanks for being here. Again, that shows how much you continue to believe in this district, and we're glad you're here tonight. Okay, we're going to now move on to the third question. Of course, we will be inviting questions from the audience throughout the evening, but we have a few here also. And this third question, if you'll listen to it, and again, it's a minute and a half, right, on the time. Okay. Please name, here's the question. Please name the biggest issue that you see facing the Westerville City Schools right now, other than finances, and what would you do to address it? And I believe Tracy Davidson gets first crack at this question tonight. Other than finances, biggest issue, and what would you do to address it?
Okay, I'm ready. Let's talk about the community and the rift, because everyone knows it's out there. There's a lot of tension going on. We've had a rough couple years, but we're ready to build bridges and to move on. And what we need to do is we need to build public support and trust, and we do need to be transparent. We need to be open and honest, and we need to listen to one another, really, really listen. And if we goof up and we make a mistake, we need to accept it and move on. We need to do this for the children of this district.
I think also that we need to open up to the community. We need to look at businesses. We need to look at those that can help us out as well too. Through our travels, I've had the opportunity to sit down with the library director, and we found out that there was an opportunity for the school system to accept the cataloging system from the library. Right now, the system is such that if every school gets the same book, each school has to log the same book in at each school. So that would have been a great opportunity there. Also, it opened up 70 million books through the state of Ohio, through Search Ohio and Ohio Link, that would have been available to our children as well. So we talk about opening up to the community, but we need to make sure that we follow through on that as well.
I think this is probably something that everybody sitting at this table will have about 90% of the same answer. So I'm going to take part of my 90 seconds real quick and say I am so happy Nancy Nestor Baker got that stop sign too, because I didn't want to be the only one. But absolutely, the biggest issue that I see is the division that exists in the district. I moved here in 2006. In the last couple years, I've seen that division grow. I haven't seen anything really be done to bridge that gap between the different lines of thought, the different personalities that we have, the different cultures in here. So absolutely, what Tracy started out with saying is that we need to have open and honest communication. We need to be transparent. We need to have those tough conversations and not shy away from them because they may be politically charged one way or the other. If you believe something and it's the truth, then say it and then have that conversation about it. So transparency builds trust. And that's the key word to bringing the district back together, is being open and honest with everybody. 30 seconds. Being open and honest with everybody, having those tough conversations, being willing to admit you're wrong. When you're wrong, step up and say, I did it, not make an excuse. You know, be part of fixing the problem and not fixing the blame, and be part of the solution and not the problem. So absolutely, and we can do this, by the way. And as a board member, I will absolutely make sure it does happen.
So I'm going to say ditto to save having to say all the points again. But I think that there is an opportunity here. You know, we have been through some challenging time. There's no doubt about it. And we do need to bring the community back together around education. You know, that's the reason, one of the reasons that we have already planned to kick off a strategic planning process. You know, that's a great starting point in bringing the community back together around education to understand what's important. Because I think the other key criteria for this the other key point for this community right now is that we do need to focus on programming and making sure that our kids are getting what they need. And we never need to, so it's almost like we've got parallel activities that need to occur. We need to rebuild our community engagement, but we need to focus on the programming that our students need to be successful. You know, we've seen the rollout of the new state report card this year, and that's identified some opportunities for us. So we need to make sure that we've got time to fix those opportunities. And we can, right? At the end of the day, the old saying is, what gets measured gets done, right? And so that's the reason you put measures in place. And we absolutely need to focus on those types of things. but we need to focus on more than just that, right? You know, more than just the bare minimums that we need to make an A in this community. We also need to focus on the programming that our students need to be successful. And I really look forward to this strategic planning process that we're kicking off here shortly to be able to bring the community in and understand what are those things that are critical, critical to making our kids successful in the future.
I agree with I agree with the others that the dissension in the community is a big issue. But I think another big issue, and I've seen this in walking around again, is that we do have a strong reduction or a dramatic reduction in the course offerings for students. In the middle school, technology courses have been dropped. Kids have to have 2 study halls. Parents complain about boredom of the children. They're not challenged in that area. In the high school, we've lost computer fundamentals class, web development, website development classes, all in an age of technology. So the students are not being offered competitive courses as they are in the other districts. We're competing, whether we like it or not. Parents are moving away to different districts, going to private schools, charter schools, homeschooling, because of some of them are very unhappy with what their kids are being offered. So I think we do need to address that. And since I can't talk about budgets, that's the way we have to address it, is to redivert some of the monies to do these things again. But we do need to do them. And so that's one of my priority issues.
Somehow I have a feeling we're going to talk about budgets eventually. Let me address this way. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hands, okay? I want you to be honest now. How many of you in this room want the very best educational system Westerville can possibly afford? How many of you want that? Okay. How many of you want to pay more taxes? Okay. That's it, right there. I didn't say, are you willing to pay more taxes? I said, you want to. The deal is, we have to figure out how to come out of the gate with the agreement that we all want the very best educational system we can, and we also want to be wise with our finances. So I would say to you, taking finances off the table, I would suggest to you that this rift, this dissension, this struggle really is not a paper tiger. It's a real deal. And so Cynthia and I have lived, my bride, and I have lived here for 24 years, almost 25 years. And I have not seen this kind of rift before. And I don't want to see it anymore. And so I'm suggesting to you that one of the ways we engage people is by not only saying we will listen to you, but we will hear you. And we will respond.
I thought at first that I would say that the primary issue facing us is the disconnect between the district and the community, because it's huge. But I think that that actually is symptom as much as issue. I really think that the primary issue that we have succumbed to is the narrowing of our discourse, the narrowing of our discussion, the narrowing of our agenda for what public education is and should be here in Westerville. When I think about the ever-tightening focus of our words about what should be cut, what should be restored, what should be put on the ballot, what taxes should be paid, all I see in that is a transactional relationship between school employees and the community. That's not what we need, that's not who we are, that's not how we create a great educational system. Instead, what we have to be doing is finding ways to open up that discourse so that we talk about our aspirations, so that we talk about what it means to have a Westerville education, so that we talk about what programs really should exist to create a well-educated, well-rounded citizen that comes back and is able to contribute to society the way we expect. I don't want us to succumb to the narrow agendas that divide this community. It is incredibly destructive, it is incredibly dangerous, and unfortunately, it is what has ruled our discourse over the past few years. And that's why I decided to run for the board again.
Well, I think the biggest issue that I've been seeing really is around our educational value that we're delivering our kids. Yeah, we've been involved with the financial aspect of it, but when you start digging into things and you see that, quite frankly, our Ohio graduation test rates are 8 points below every other surrounding district that are out there. All 3 high schools at one point were identified by the state of Ohio as identified for improvement, and we are at a 37.5% plus remedial rate for our students going to college. Those are data points that we need to understand, and quite frankly, I think they're poor data points for our district. I think that's the biggest issue that we're facing. It's about our kids. John Sote, Luke Davis, and I talk about what we call a students first management platform. We put our students first. We come along, we find out what they need, we find out what courses they need, and then we figure out how to fund it, and we make sure that we don't hurt our kids ever again, whether it's the core classes, extracurriculars, sports, anything of that nature. We put together those kinds of programs with those kinds of budgeting, and that's how we solve this greatest issue. We bring in the best teachers for those classes, and our kids will improve. We're seeing it happen in other districts. We know how it's done, and we've got the plan to make it happen.
All right, very nice. Well, I tried to keep the budget off the table for one question as we expanded beyond that, but now we're going to bring you right back to it. 82% labor costs constitute the largest percentage, at least 82% of the school's budget. Please tell us what you would specifically do to contain rising labor costs when the employees' contracts are relegated the next time. And for this, we begin with Luke Davis tonight.
We've already proven where we stand, Jim Burgess, John Sote, and myself, ethically, and this is where the community will see the greatest change. Until 2012, there were very few votes on the board that were not unanimous. As we've already shown, we've raised the ethical standard by choosing not to participate in the endorsement process with the Westerville Education Association. We cannot be beholden to any one labor group when we sit down to negotiate contracts. The student needs to come first. The budgeting needs to begin in the classroom. So with that said, that's really where we'll begin. It's going to have to come at labor costs.
And this is a very tough and emotional topic to talk about, because let me go on record right now and say that I do not begrudge anybody for earning a living. I think the education that our teachers provide for our kids is one of the most important things that I could do for my kids. So I am not one of those folks that say we've got to cut this, we've got to cut that, as far as the salaries and benefits are concerned. The problem that we have, that I've been in the books since about 2008. My pastor told me one time, it wasn't Rick, but my pastor told me one time that if you want to find out what's important to somebody, look at their checkbook. And so I started looking at their checkbook, and that's when I discovered exactly what was mentioned, is that 82%, and it fluctuates between 80 and 85%, but a lot of money is tied up in labor costs. And so I started doing trending. Being a numbers guy that I am, I believe you've got to have a lot of data points before you have an opinion. So I started doing some trending, and what caught my eye was that it wasn't so much that people weren't making, for what they do, they weren't making good money for what they do, but that the trend was 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation. So I think that the thing that we need to do is we need to bring in line the rising costs of education to be in line with the cost of living, and also in line with what the taxpayers can support. That's what I talk about when I say financial sustainability. It's about making sure there's a balance between quality education and affordability.
It's a great word, balance, and I think that is important. At the end of the day, education is a people-intensive business, right? You put teachers in the classroom, you have custodians who clean the building, you have lunch ladies who serve you lunch, you have secretaries who work in the front hall. It is a people-intensive business, and one of the things that we really focus on is trying to drive out the non-value-added costs. So the non-people costs, we work on decreasing those non-people costs so that we can focus in on the people, because that's where the magic happens. But with that being said, the one thing that as the incumbent, I've got the ability to say that for the past several years, we've been very focused on costs, personnel costs in particular. The things that we've done in 2006, we changed our health insurance plan to decrease costs. In 2012, we changed our health insurance costs again to significantly decrease costs, including going to self-insured, which could have anywhere from a $1 to $3 million positive impact on our bottom line year over year. We've looked at opportunities to negotiate hard, and everybody out there knows that we negotiated in very difficult situations, and we had to do what was necessary at the table for the right things for our district. But it does need to be balanced because it's a people business, and we need to have great people in there educating our kids. So we need to be very careful how we balance it, because what we don't want to do is not have the great people in there educating our kids, delivering the magic for our kids every day.
The cost increases in salary and benefits is a very delicate issue, as Kevin mentioned. Negotiations are tough with the employees, and they want their raises as well as the community. But per the Chamber of Commerce last year in their recommendation in endorsing the levy, they recommended that the district move to parity with, in the benefits area, with private industry. Those are areas that we do need to address. It will be a tough issue, but they have to be addressed. Also, a flattening of the, as Robert mentioned, the dramatic increase in wages that is 2 or 3 times the rate of inflation over the last 15 years. That needs to be addressed and flattened wherever possible, so that the employees do have parity with private industry in the raises and benefits. If we sell levies, we want to sell levies, Luke and Jim and I want to sell levies in a positive way and not say you either vote for this or we'll cut your kids' benefits. So I think that will be a big issue coming up for the long term, not just the short term.
Costs have to be handled, and they have to be handled in an equitable way. I want to try to stick to what we need to do without diving into the ethics. I'm going to save 30 seconds for that at the end. Number one, we need to continue an ongoing competitive bidding process. That has to be on the table. Number two, we have to set some benchmarks for people and their performance, and we have to measure as best we can. Number three, we have to look at the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and figure out, okay, what are the benchmarks for increases? What are the standards in industry and business for health insurance and all of that? And I'll tell you what, one thing I would do is I would applaud some of these groups that have give some things back in these last few years. Maybe some guys up here don't think it's enough. Maybe some think it's too much. But I want to honor that they have tried to do that. And I think more needs to be done. The second thing I would say is I appreciate people saying that they need to know their ethical boundaries by not being interviewed by certain subsets of people. I appreciate that. I know my ethical boundaries. Please don't challenge my ethical boundaries by who I can talk to. Republican, Democrat, Tea Party, Progressive. I want you all in the room now. Stop.
There are a lot of things embedded in this question, and right off the bat I will deal with the first statement that was said. I don't think that the labor management relationship should be adversarial any more than is absolutely necessary. I think that that assumption of adversarial aspect in that relationship is outdated and outmoded. I think as you look across the country at high-performing education systems, you'll see that these are systems where labor and management work together, where in actuality, labor and management serve as checks and balances for each other to ensure ethical behavior, as well as ensuring effective efficiencies and effective assignment of personnel and effective delivery of program. When we talk about 82% labor costs, it's important to keep in mind that that actually is very normal for education organizations. You have to think about what we've got here. One of the candidates said that this is a people business. It is. That is why most of the costs go to people. When we look at what our core mission is, the core mission of the field of education is educating students so that they will be productive citizens. If we're going to do that, we have to make sure that we invest significantly in that core mission. We also have to make sure that the support structures that are created to support that core mission actually do so in as efficient a way as possible. I'm really concerned about the ideas that have been promoted about cutting administrators. If we cut administrators too far, we end up fragmenting and not allowing the creation of a decent education program, and it says stop, darn it.
Your stop comment kind of stopped me. What we've also heard, we've heard a lot of comments from parents that this is a public education. I'm paying so much more in taxes than I've ever paid, and yet I still have to go to school and write a check for $150, $250, $350 for supplies and fees. And so where the right balance of 82%, 75% really should be, we need to make sure that we're providing a fantastic education for our kids and our families and not overburdening them with additional fees as well. And that's what's one of the items we talk about in a student's first budgeting process to help eliminate a lot of those extra fees and things that you get walking into a classroom. It's a public education. But as far as items go, you know, I've seen, there's a gentleman in our community who helped save this community $28 million, around that number, just by coming to the school with an idea and rearranging a process or deal that was going to happen. So that was great from what he did. But we can find people in the community to help us. We believe there's more room in the healthcare that we can take out. We believe that, that we do need a balance with the community, that we have to balance what the community can afford while delivering an excellent education. So those are the things we need to do, but we do need to watch how we're spending our money and where that percentage number ends up. I talked too much and you're doing this. She started you early too.
Oh, okay.
That's
Sorry.
how I lost time. Sorry.
So our district, friends, is it's more than dollars. It's a people-driven enterprise, and our teachers are educating our youth. So let's talk about where our teachers land. Out of the 16 area districts, we pay our teachers 12 out of 16. Is that okay? Because if we run a business, when we want to be competitive, we need to be in the middle. I think we really need to talk about this. How are we going to retain the best teachers? How are we going to attract new, great teachers? I think we should all think about that.
And so we shall. As we move to the next question. And this is from the audience. This is a question directly from the audience, and we want to give it airplay here. So here it is. Over the past few elections, there have been several levy issues on the ballot. Would you please offer an opinion on these issues and share your philosophy on when, how, and why levies should or should not be on the ballot? And I think it's time for Mr. Hoffman to start.
Oh, no, it's
Mr.
my
Edwards.
turn.
Oh, sorry,
I'd
Robert.
gladly let him go first, because going first is tough.
I always
guys.
do.
That's really tough. But I think the best way that I can answer your question is to say what drew me into school politics. Because prior to moving here in 2006, I was kind of oblivious. I had always heard things. Yeah, it's always been hearsay. But in 2008, within 2006 to 2008, I was hit with 3 levies in my new house. Like, we just moved here, and you budget so much in levies, and they passed. And my taxes had gone up, a significant amount of money. So I just asked the question, why are my taxes going up? And then the answer I got started out with Dr. Good, when I asked him at one of his coffees. So levies, number one, I will go on the record and say there is a place for levies. The way we're funded, there's no way we can survive without levies. I am not a no levy guy, ever guy. But what I am about is when you put a levy on the ballot, then let's make sure we've done everything we can to balance our budget, to live within our means, to spend only what we see in our 5-year forecast, maybe flip some processes around that kind of pigeonhole us. And this has happened time and time again. We go into negotiations and we negotiate ourselves into a corner. So we know we're in deficit spending. We know we're going to need a levy in 2 years. And we know it's going to be between $16 and $20 million. And what I want to do is turn that around, put processes in place so that we can put levies out there half as large and they last twice as long. And you put me on the board and I guarantee you we will get there.
Guarantee's a heck of a word
I
there, Mr.
guarantee
Edwards.
it. I guarantee it.
I will tell you right now, I hate levies. I've had to deal with them, for 12 years on the board because it's a part of the reality of a funding model that's broken. But it is the funding model that we have, so we have to understand it. You know, at the end of the day, you know, quality education, fiscal accountability, right? That's really what it comes down to. And we should make sure that we are doing everything we can to make sure we are maximizing every dollar that we have. Every dollar that we have. And we need to be focused on that. And I think this district has been focused on that. And at some point, one of the challenges is that, you know, it's a people business. And you're going to want, if you have people out there, those people are going to want to be able to keep up with inflation and things like that. So there's costs that are going to go up. And it's a, you know, business where the enrollment goes up, the needs of the student go up. And so the reality of it is costs are going to naturally go up unless you look for ways to reduce those costs. And we've looked for those ways to reduce those costs over time. You know, right now, we are at a place we've not been in the last 25 years. We have a 5-year forecast that has been that will be balanced for 5 years from the time it was originally written. That is the first time in 25 years because we've really focused on the things that we need to do to get us there. When we put the last levy on the ballot, we thought we'd go 3 years. Because of great work by this district, by the administration, by the leadership, and all the members of the staff, we are in a situation where we will go 5 years without a new levy. And we need to keep focused on it every day to do the right things so that it stays 5 years or more. Thank you.
Like Robert, I watched my taxes go up over the last 15 years, and that's what basically got me in this race. I became alarmed and started looking closely at what the district was doing, and it seems as though, from a taxpayer's perspective, we vote in $1-million, multi-million-dollar tax increases, and the students' benefits are continuing to be cut. As I mentioned, our course catalog has been reduced. Our student services, busing has gone down. So I think we need we have to deal with levies because that's the way we're financed, but we need to flatten the levy progress, make them parallel to the rate of inflation, and learn to live within our budget and process things so that we do balance it, we provide the benefits for students, and we become competitive with other districts in the course catalogs and things like that we offer.
Listen, this is an easy thing to talk about. This is a very hard thing to implement. And so if you're asking me, and I think the question is, you know, why would you put a levy on? What would be the criteria, et cetera? For me to have a levy on, unless it's some kind of operational building deal, it would have to be focused on educational excellence, raising the level of the quality, driving excellence through our educational offerings. We have cut way too much. But again, I would suggest to you that one of the ways that we can put levies on, and it's not a horrific thing for people, is if there is a lot of communication on the front end about this is why we think we need the levy, and here are some ways we have cost contained, here are some ways that we have tried to drive down the numbers, but we still need this levy. Look at CPI, look at everything around us. We just need a little bit more money to drive educational excellence. And so I would suggest to you that levy doesn't have to be the damning, dividing thing that it has become. It can be a thing that if we all work together and we try to build some kind of coalition of, yes, we want this educational opportunity for our children, and we need to develop some more resources, will you please help us?
I absolutely agree with that, Rick. I think one of the major problems that we see with levies in all districts, not just this one, is the lack of engagement of the community long beforehand. Not because there's a levy coming, not because we're trying to get more money for whatever reason, but because engaging with the community is the proper thing to do because the schools belong to the community. I talked earlier about that narrowing of the discourse, the narrowing of the agenda. So much of that has occurred because we haven't engaged the community properly in talking about what the education ought to be. Board members typically really, really hate putting levies on. And you only do it after there is extensive due diligence, after you wrestle with the numbers, after you wrestle with the assumptions that are behind the numbers, after you try to identify the best program you can provide for the least millage increase that you can put out there. It's hard to put levies on. It's harder if you have not engaged the community. It's harder if you haven't developed that reservoir of social capital, that reservoir of trust that needs to exist in a community between a community and its schools. I didn't get the stop sign.
That's great. Well, I think what's great, when we talk about our Students First Management Plan, we're actually following the footsteps of a school board south of Dayton. They have improved their ACT scores, reduced their remedial rates, brought back items to students, busing, reduced pay-to-play fees, and have given employees raises, and they're actually doing a tax reduction this year on the ballot. We've seen that management, the proper management, proper leadership will bring balance and into line with the budget. And so we've seen it, we see it can be done. With that, tax levies, inevitably with the cost of living and the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, costs are inevitably going to go up. But levies shouldn't be every 2 to 3 years. They should be 4, 5, 8, 10 years out, 2 to 3%, not 25% increases or even 15% increases. But it's possible to do it while managing it properly and bringing value to the community and to our kids through their education as well.
I'd like to echo a lot of what Rick said, but I would like to add, in addition to that, we need to learn from the past, but it's time to move forward. You know, we have financial stability until 2017 at least. This is the time where we learn from our mistakes but move forward. Let's talk about building. Let's talk about bringing programs back. Let's talk about bringing down pay-to-play fees and bringing more enrichment opportunities to our kids. I think people want to be positive. I think they're tired of all the anger, and we really do need to move forward.
There's a principle that's true no matter where you go in the world. The more tax money that you take from a district, the greater the poverty in that district will be. That needs to be understood when we look at tax levies. The other problem with it is that it really has been a history of services being cut. We are still today picking up students on Sunbury Road, elementary and middle school students. We're not going into the subdivision. In November of 2011, it was cited that 23 million is what was needed. Then that did not pass. Then in March of 2012, it was said 16 million. Then there was 7 million in concessions, 8 million I heard earlier tonight, in concessions. That's the 23, 24 million that was asked for. The cuts still weren't restored. So there needs to be transparency on those things, but also combined with it is really being open and honest. Can you show this has been the inflation rate? This is why the levy needs to be put on the ballot. Can we show, no parents, these services won't be reduced. You won't lose things in middle school. You won't lose the transportation things, the best items as I call them. We'll talk about those later.
All right, want to do a couple of things. I'll ask our highly paid professional from Otterbein, Soundman, can we boost the mics up just a hair? Because we've had a couple of comments, people asking that people lean in a little closer. Some are being heard great, that looks good. But again, kind of speak up, if you will, for everybody, because this place is packed out. At last count, we have 107 people in here, which is pretty amazing. So the next question, thank you, sir. Are you in a fraternity? Okay. Just wanted to see if you were a frat bro of mine or not, but never mind. Okay, so here's the next question, and it is thus, from the audience. It would appear that realignment of school district boundaries is on the horizon. What are your views on attendance boundaries? Should geographical, racial, economic, academic tracking programs, college prep, so forth, should they all be moved into certain areas of the district?
I guess that's me.
It is you, Kevin.
You talk about, we just talked about levies. I hate levies. We talk about realignment. I hate realignment. Nobody likes change. I mean, let's be realistic. We started through a process this past year of realignment because we do have schools that are overcrowded, because we did have to make some decisions about the former magnet school. And we went through that process, and we did exactly what you should do in any process. We listened. We listened intently. And you know what that caused us to do? It caused us to stop the process, because there was enough concern from so many different directions, right? You had a bunch of people who wanted a bunch of different answers, but we couldn't reconcile them all. So we said, let's take a step back and let's look at this a little more strategically and then move forward. At the end of the day, when and if we have to realign, and because we do have, crowding problems in places, it's possible that we will. When and if we do, we always start with neighborhood schools, right? Everybody picks where they live one of the key priorities that they pick about where they live is what school they're going to go to. That's always the starting point. And quite honestly, if you looked at any of the plans that were looked at, they all started with folks going to the contiguous school, right? The challenge is there are a few folks that are contiguous to multiple schools or not to any. And then you have to figure out how do you deal with that, and you deal with it based on capacity after that. That's really what it comes down to. And that's absolutely the metric that was used and the metric that should be used, because people pick where they live based on the schools. Thank you.
In walking around the district, this was a major point of contention, was the realignment that we tried to do back in the spring. And many parents told me that one of their big issues was they didn't want their students moved from a high-performing school to a low-performing school. All of our schools don't perform at the same level, and I think we need to address that quickly. There's disciplinary issues in some schools where I talked to a parent who lived right across from the school, and she said she had to fight to keep her kid from going to that school because of disciplinary problems. So we need to have good administrative guidelines, follow them uniformly, be strict on discipline, and those things will help people adjust to a realignment if it's necessary. Right now, the community is not going to accept that, and in talking to people, I can understand why.
Realignment at some point in a district's history will always be necessary. People will move. Demographics will change. Schools will be built, more people will come in, etc. We must always look at the neighborhood model first and foremost. We are not charged to be doing social experiments with our children, shuffling them around like they are pawns on a chessboard. Most especially in elementary school. These kids are trying to get their feet underneath them about, do I even want to be in this building with all of these people? And so I would suggest to you that the mixing and the creation of a balance will happen as you go from 14 to 4 to 3. I just went through elementary, middle, high, right? So that will be a natural part of the process. The second thing I would suggest is that we need to be very wise about when we close schools. I would suggest that we created some of this problem recently by closing some very high-performing schools. We closed high-performing schools, and immediately there was an exodus from the community. Cause and effect? I don't know. But do we do exit interviews when people leave to find out, why are you leaving? I don't think so.
When you do redistricting, on the one hand, it's almost a compliment because nobody wants to leave the school they're in. That's actually a pretty darn good thing. It says a great deal about the schools. Redistricting does have to happen every now and then. And when we do it, we have to do it not from a bureaucratic standpoint, but we have to do it from a human standpoint, a geographic standpoint, and an educational program standpoint. I absolutely think, and I was really upset, that the magnet schools should not have been closed. I do not believe that was necessary. I do not believe that the student numbers suggest that the different uses that have been suggested for it make sense. That said, I think it's important to keep those small buildings as parental choice options within the larger realignment of boundaries. When you look at boundaries and you look at alignment, you start with neighborhood, as everyone said. Keeping children close to their neighborhood elementary schools as much as possible is extremely important for the kids as much as for the neighborhood itself. And then as we move outward from that, you could begin to look at geography a little bit differently. But you always start with the humans and the educational program before you make any changes.
Well, I too would like to avoid any realignment issues. Working with or being in communication with the team that did do that this past year, and hearing from the parents, the local school for elementary is got to be a must. As a parent myself, with a 4-year-old coming up, I want my 4-year-old or my daughter to stay in her local elementary school. We moved in, we know where the middle schools and high schools were, we knew that issue, and that's perfectly fine. I think working with the team that did this, they talked about looking at the racial and socioeconomic aspects of it, and racial had no, they told me racial really had no bounds on this, and the socioeconomic research might be there to do some things. So we would have to take all those things into consideration if we had to do it. Again, I would prefer not to do it. But I think to really look before we leap again, we really need to set the vision. We need the people to come, the parents, the community to come together and say, what do we want our schools to be? What do we want our programs to be? And then we find out where they house them, because the data, the talking points are right, that a lot of these issues were being created because we're taking kids out of schools and sending them out in overcrowding. So we need to account for overcrowding and eliminate that, provide a vision for what our education should be, and get it right and stick with it for so we're not really having to do this again.
I know this is a hot button because I was on the realignment committee, and many nights I didn't sleep because of it. We need to find out exactly what the community wants. And although everyone said they wanted their home school, unfortunately, when you split those uptown schools, there's not a home school for that area, for those kids. We're shuffling kids around. But first I want to go back. I'm sorry I'm off task. Let's talk about numbers. 58 kids is what we're talking about. We're over at our schools. 58 kids, but we were willing to move around 1,000 kids. So I think we need to figure out, is it because there's 27 kids in a classroom and that feels too tight? Why? Is it a bubble? And why the redistricting started was because we were closing the magnets. If you open up those uptown schools and you make those schools of choice, and I don't care what you want to call them, it alleviates that problem, and it gives parents choice. And on top of that, do we want to bus kids from the north into from the south? Because we don't have enough schools in the south for those kids. So it's so much more than moving kids around, and it is a hot button. I would prefer not to redistrict. I'm sure eventually it's going to come about, but we need bigger community buy-in. Sorry. Oh.
Okay. All of the reputable studies for student success show that the greatest contributor to that is parental involvement. The greatest way to support that is neighborhood schools. The closer you can get the family to the school that they go to, the easier it is on that family. They can maximize their resources. The school can maximize the involvement of the parent, and the success of the child will be greatly increased. Put it simply, to me, it's a common sense thing here. As close to the school, what benefits the family first? What choices can be provided to them? And again, predominantly the family.
And like many others up here who have already said it, going last is like Rick said the first question. Going last is kind of cool because you can echo a lot of what people have said. But redistricting is part of what's going to happen as people move in and out. You know, the population demographics will change. I agree that it should be geographically first. I want to share a real quick story of my first Fourth Friday as a candidate. I had someone come up to me almost the minute I set up my stand and they said, how are you going to vote on this redistricting? And I'm going, excuse me? And it was really animated. And I said, well, give me an example. He said, well, I moved to this community, and right across the school is where I want my kids to go. But all these plans send my kid, 45 minutes away. How are you going to vote? And I said, does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? I would vote no. Again, we need to have neighborhood. If you're going to build community, you've got to be in the same area. You've got to start there, at least. Start there. But let me talk about the magnet schools, what kind of precipitated the latest thing here. I believe that the magnet school closing was done in haste without any kind of downstream impact analysis. The redistricting was a knee-jerk reaction to try to fix a problem that we created. I think we need to do better as a board to think longer and harder on these kind of things that do have downstream impact and consider those before we make decisions like that. By the way, 15 seconds, you know there are about 128 kids that went to both of those schools apiece. So they're very small schools and old schools too. They're cool, but old.
I remember when my youngest sang a song about Emerson when it was 100 years old, and that was a long time ago. So, yes, but it's a classic. It's a Disney castle. Next question. If the Ohio legislature defunds Common Core, how will you correct the changes already made in the curriculum, including textbooks? If Common Core is not defunded, what are your thoughts concerning these federal government standards? And I guess we're going to begin with John, right?
That's a tough one. 2 ifs and no answer. Common Core has been a divisive issue throughout the United States. There have been 45 states that have said, yes, we're going Common Core. Ohio is one of them. I guess they would have to tell us they're going to back off that if they defund it. Without the funding, we're in big trouble because we just committed to buy a lot of textbooks. They're changing curriculums and things like that. So Common Core, to defund that would be a major adjustment for our school district. I don't know if we have the old textbooks in a warehouse, things like that. So I suppose some of the textbooks could be used and we could save money there, but there'd have to be a tremendous amount of adjustment, and it would be a big cost effect to the district. And if we do continue with Common Core, it is a state law. I don't always agree with what they're doing. I don't like the data mining that they do and things like that. It's too much information for us to give the government for any reason. But we will have to deal with it, and we'll have to find a way to stay within the law, but do it as minimally as possible.
See, what's interesting is that's a good question, and it's nuts at the same time. Because there is a possibility that the state legislature may defund it, and there's a possibility that they may not defund it. So we have to go with what we have right now. And one of the things I would say is a deeper understanding of Common Core. Common Core is not about data mining. Common Core is about going into an issue. It's about studying a subject. Instead of going very broadly, it is about going deeper. That's a good thing about Common Core. Bad thing about Common Core is that it tries to get children to work together in groups, and some of those grades are actually shared. So if your partner in a group doesn't do very well, it will pull your grade down. That's not a bad thing because we do that in business, we do that in work, but we're not teaching our children how to work in groups before they're required to work in groups. And so I would suggest to you that Common Core itself, we need to go with what it is right now. And I would suggest to you that we also need to band together with similar districts and stop the tail from wagging the dog and suggest to the state that you're the tail. And you need to stop wagging us so much back and forth. Or something like that.
There's so many misconceptions about the Common Core standards. The Common Core standards actually have been adopted across 40 states, and they were created by the National Governors Association. Actually, the work began during the Bush presidency. So people talk about them as Obama standards and so forth, and Obama Core, and that's one misconception. The other is about the data collection. There is not additional data collection other than the data collection that is already going on, that has been going on for some time in our schools. Defunding, I'm just not seeing that happening. It is highly, highly unlikely. Of course, I would have said that the government wasn't going to shut down too. But so it's highly unlikely that the Common Core standards are going to be defunded. If they are, if that should happen, we have to step back and say, okay, what's the deal here? The standards do some really good things for us. They actually encourage the creative thinking, the critical analysis, the group work, and so forth and so on, that we really want our students to become proficient in so that they can function well in the 21st century workforce. So it isn't that we would get out old textbooks or anything like that, because that's kind of 20th century. We need to be focusing on how we prepare our students so they function really well now, and so they function even better when they graduate and become part of the workforce. What we have to look out for, though, is the implementation. The standards don't tell us how to teach, okay? We decide how we're going to deliver the curriculum. That's where our focus will be.
I think either way, right now, we're dealing with a lot of unknowns. Even if we have to stay the course with the Common Core, there are a lot of unknowns. It's not a determined or a measured international standard like it's been sold to be. So I think there's still some issues with where it's at. But there's still a lot of cost that has to go along with that many school districts are finding they can't afford, and we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. And if it's defunded right now, we still have that same issue. So either way, we're going to have to sit back and deal with what the state gives us. It's a lot of the things that happen. It's a lot of, John, Luke, and I are dealing with an issue right now with the state senator before we've even become board candidates, and he's willing to put a law together to help us with an issue that we see. So yes, we've got to deal with what the state gives us. But if they defund it, we'll figure the way out of it. I agree that at least from a standards perspective, it's got to be better than where we were. We needed better standards. The baggage that might come along with it might be nice to get rid of as well. If we keep it, again, I think we just have to go in with where we're at and do the best for our students that comes along with it. One of the things I did not like was the Common Core said you don't teach Algebra 1 in 8th grade. I think that's a ridiculous part of the standard, but there are some good things that I think come along with it that we should keep as well.
Okay. I don't think our district can function on what ifs. So I think we need to own it. We've adopted it, so let's move on. Let's talk about the good things with Common Core. We talked about it's going to raise, it has a rigorous college-ready standards, so it raises the bar for our students, which we need when we talk about remediation in college. The curriculum's developed at our level, at this level. So if it's not working, we can change it. That's a good thing. And as an educator, I will tell you, it has a mastery and not memorization. That's how our kids learn. And also, there's a multi-sensory approach. You see it, you feel it, you touch it. That's it. That's what we need for our kids.
There's been a lot of talk of the benefits of Common Core. I would say, honestly, my main concern would be, is the bar set too low? If we establish our own curriculum and we establish what we're going to teach our children, if we raise that up high enough, the low bar takes care of itself. So I would like to see us go with, for example, the standards in Massachusetts were already set and they're high above Common Core, and their students are producing very, very well. I would like to see us do something more on lines with that. So as far as the unknowns go, other than just you have to deal with the situation that you're in, I really don't know how to answer that other than you have to wait and see what is the state going to do. Are they going to fund it? Or are they not going to fund it?
This is a tough subject, and I throughout the campaign have kind of, and I'll admit it, I've kind of walked the wire a little bit, because I have a 3rd grade and a 5th grader, and I've been working with them on their homework, and I've seen Common Core firsthand. And it's pretty good stuff from what I see, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. I only have a narrow focus, 3rd and 5th grade. I see what I see there. But there's a lot of misinformation out there on Common Core on both sides. And if some of the stuff I read and hear and see people say is true, I have some serious concerns about it myself. As far as the sharing of information, it's not tied to Common Core. That's the assessment side of it. Common Core does not share information with the federal government. It's the assessment folks who come in and assess Common Core that do that. And so there's some misinformation out there. But what do we do if it is defunded? Well, number one, we got to think of the kids first. how are the kids going to react if we've gone down this path with education and all of a sudden we've changed the path to a whole nother, maybe some kids will adapt, maybe some kids won't adapt. But I think we've got to keep that into consideration, is how's that going to impact the kids? How do we fund it if it's already gone down this path? Probably if I had to go on record saying something, I say we follow the Common Core to the end of the year. If it's defunded, because we've got the stuff in our hands. But so a lot of ifs, as everybody said. It's hard to give an answer on the what if, but if I had more data points, I could give you a definite or an absolute like I did before. But that's my opinion on it.
Common Core, I assumed we would get to this topic eventually. The key word here is misinformation. There's a ton of misinformation out there that causes people to be scared of the Common Core. At the end of the day, Common Core is standards. They are higher standards than what we had before, and that's what we need to focus on. We absolutely need them. Let's go to the reality. We actually have them. This district has been focused on implementing the Common Core for the last couple of years. We've been proactive to make sure we'd be where the state will be measuring us when they start measuring against the Common Core. So we're already there. If they say they're going to measure against something else, then we're real in trouble. We need to walk out of here and say, don't change. Because at the end of the day, if they do, that means we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to their next thing. We need to be focused on the standards as they are today. That is absolutely critical. We started with the standards, and then we developed the curriculum. I've been sitting on the board now for 12 years, and for the past 2 or 3 years, every spring, we get 4, 5, 6 topics on our agenda that are walking through the new curriculum. And we've done a fantastic job of building this curriculum based on the Common Core. There is so much, you look at the curriculum maps that they put together that talk about what the students are going to do throughout the year. It's fantastic. We just need to, get away from the misinformation, get away even from the concerns that people have about grouping. That's not Common Core. That's a delivery technique that that some folks have chosen to use. Common Core is good standards. We've got great curriculum about it. We need to keep going in that direction. Thank you.
All right. That's it. Rick, you start, right? Okay, this is your shot, and it's perfect because this appears to be the last question before your closing statements. Yes, it's an easy one. How far will the Indians go in the playoffs? Speaking of miracles, as Nancy just mentioned, who would have thought?
Being from Cincinnati,
I don't know that you want to mention that. Okay. Sorry. How about those Browns? Okay, anyway.
Jeez, Cap.
Sorry, everybody, it's all right. Just taking a breather here before this last question. It's all good. No, I sit next to a Pittsburgh fan every night at 6 and 11, so it's been rough the last decade.
But it's been good this year.
So far. All right, this is the final question here, and then after that we'll do the closing statements. So here we go. What can, and this is a kind of a deep question too, but you all see me, I'm very impressed with all of your ability to roll with these punches here. What can and should Westerville's role be in affecting change in how public education is funded at the state level? Here's this.
Is that camera on already?
Yeah.
Here's the deal. I alluded to it a few seconds ago. I think that we need to be much better at developing coalitions. I would suggest we begin around Central Ohio first, and we develop some strength behind that, and we go to the state and try to influence the state instead of the state always influencing us. Don't tell me it can't be done. David can beat Goliath. David can make some course correction here. So that's the first thing I would suggest to you. The second thing I would suggest to you is that we need to be about, on the local level, making sure that we are using our funds the best way that we can. Maximizing every child's potential must be the lens through which we look at every decision we make. And that includes going to the state and saying some of the ways you are suggesting we spend money, some of the mandates that you are giving to us, some of the unfunded mandates that you are giving to us are taking us off task. Some of the things you are doing are fine, but some of what you are doing is taking us off task. we will not continue to let you take us off task. And so I'm just suggesting that whoever is elected up here, and God willing it's me, we go, well, one of the three, we go and we suggest to the state, we are forming coalitions and we're going to try to make an impact.
I'm going to say something I keep saying tonight. This, like so many other things I've talked about, really depends on the engagement of the community. If you have 5 board members and you send them down to the State House, chances are you're really not going to get very far. But if instead you have an engaged, vocal community and you take several hundred, or better, several thousand people with you to talk to the legislators, to share best practices, to share ideas, to share our concerns, then you begin to see some movement. Think about how laws are made, and I know it's like sausage, but if you think about it, it's not about and shouldn't be about what one small group wants. It should be about what we are all talking about. Therefore, when you talk about advocacy, you've got to have the right mass. You also have to have the right knowledge. So you have to make sure that we are a go-to partner. Here in Westerville Schools, we're a go-to partner for legislative staff so that they can understand without the blowhard rhetoric and so forth that so often goes with advocacy, so that they can understand the impact of the mandates that are considered, and also understand best practices and directions that should go. So we need to develop relationships, we need to develop coalitions, and we need to do it en masse.
Walking around the community for the last 5 months, I've heard way too many people really talk about the fear of not being able to stay in Westerville because taxes are too high. I personally am kind of an advocate against real or property taxes. You can never really own your home if the government can come take it. That said, we do need a new funding model, and I think the school board will have to build, if we want to be an implementer or instigator of change, we're going to have to build coalitions with other school districts and other school boards willing to do that, willing to communicate to their communities as well to get the community involvement. Our community won't do it alone. It's going to be every community across the state. Changing something at the State House, changing this at the State House. We've shown just this past year how difficult it was, just this budget, and how many changes we kept seeing just for school funding. We need a better model. We need a better model that doesn't change at the whims of legislatures, and we need one that protects, quite frankly, the homeowner, the families, so that they're not taxed out of their homes or out of a certain district, yet the district is funded for the programs and activities they need to support their kids.
We need to be proactive and not reactive when it comes to this. We do need to build partnerships with our community and our legislators. We need to be down at the State House and working on this. We have got to change this funding model, which I think is pretty much what everyone up here just said.
Yeah, and the State House is great, as Jim alluded to earlier. Jim, John, and I are already working with a state senator on a bill that will help bring win-win money back into our district instead of sending it to someone else for their children. The other thing to think about here too is we may not have to go to the State House. If I may remind you, the governor happens to live in our school district. Certainly we can get some things done there as well too. I think we need to be on the forefront, leading the charge. I think that we can certainly bring change about. One of the things that may be a little bit different about me is I love change. I embrace it. I'm on the forefront of it. Adaptability is one of my highest characteristic traits, and I welcome it. Bring it on.
Bring it on. I agree with everybody. We've got to change the model. There's no doubt about that. How we do it, there's going to be multiple ideas, but definitely coalition with other districts, working with our state reps as well. But I'm going to take a little bit of twist on this because that's a revenue thing. I submit to you, I agree we have a revenue problem there, but I submit to you we have more of a spending problem. Whenever you spend, and over the next 5 years, we talked about the 2017, we're balanced through 2017. Consider what we had to do to get that. We took large cuts We passed the levy, and for all intents and purposes, we didn't put any of those cuts back. For all intents and purposes, that's where that balance 2017 came from. So I submit to you, if we need a levy in 2017, which sounds like that's what I'm hearing, at least from those that I've talked to on the board, is that we're gonna go through $80 million in the next 5 years. And for what? We just lost all these programs and services. We passed the levy we really didn't do much about, and we're gonna burn through $80 million. I submit to you, we have a spending problem. Spending is something we control. The revenue, we've got to work at that, but spending is something we control. We need to align our spending to the money that we have in hand and make it last longer than it's lasting right now. I submit to you again that we don't need another levy until 2020 if we get spending under control now while we're working on the revenue and the model.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Let's talk about this a little bit. I think your key point is that is correct. We need to focus on maximizing the value we can deliver in this school district for the dollars that we have. We need to be realistic about that. This community is a net sender of money to the state. Really, when it takes income taxes, that goes down to the state, we get very little back. One of the things we found, because in 12 years on the board, we've had this discussion again and again and again with every superintendent, with every legislator about that, and we've done a lot, really. The discussions we've had about state mandates and the state mandates we prevented because we've stayed engaged are great. The homestead exemption changed because this district actually, went to the legislature and said, let's change that. We focused on ESL. We worked through the channels that we have, and we've been very successful. Part of the reason you don't see the success is because things don't happen, and nobody complains when things don't happen. It's when things do happen. I think Dr. Nestor Baker really talked about it, though. When we're talking about making real change, it's not 5 board members. We're 5 people. We talk a lot to legislators. We talk a lot to legislatures. We talk a lot to our lobbyists. We send our lobbyists to do what they need to do. But at the end of the day, it's about building coalitions in this community and across communities to do things that are really valuable for education in this state. That's the way we're going to make change, not through 5 people here, but for the community making change together.
In walking around the district, I've come across a couple people that suggested the same thing, that the state must change its funding program so that generally it means that we, Westerville, get more money from the state. Everybody assumes that will happen if the state changes their funding program. As Kevin mentioned, Westerville is considered one of the more wealthy districts in the state. When the state changes their funding formula, they usually base it on the wealth of the district. We could wind up getting less money instead of more if they change the formula. So the devil's in the details on what happens. We have to work with our legislatures to make sure they don't do things like that, but help everybody. And that's going to be a real tough problem, because working with the state in the social services area, I know that the Medicaid expenses for the state are just eating the state budget up alive. Over 60% of our tax dollars go to Medicaid alone. So there's very little room left for all the other things the governor has to fund. So changing the state allocation is a major, complicated deal. And as Kevin said, 5 members of the board can't do it. It'll take the whole state working together to do something, and coming up with more money is a very, very tough issue.
All right, gentlemen and ladies, wonderful job on addressing all those questions. Of course, we couldn't get to all of them because, there were just so many, and each one of you, with the time that we have allotted you, did a very nice job of staying. We didn't have to slap anybody's wrist. You all were very, very respectful of the time, so we appreciate that. And by the way, I'm a Reds fan tonight in Pittsburgh. Come on, buddy. All right, so it is time now for our closing comments, and we have a minute and a half again, I presume, Janet, right? For you to tell us why we should vote for you. And I think we got to go back down to the good doctor down on the end.
This is an election for 3 board members, a majority of the board. Board members whose actions will shape not only the educational health of the schools, but the economic health of the entire community. The decisions that are made, the pathways that are taken by this board will set the trajectory for the schools and the community for years to come, perhaps irrevocably. As you make your decisions about this very important election, about what you want our schools to be, look at each of us, at our capacities and our records for leadership. Look at what we've proven we can do, and look at what we believe. I can only speak to my experience, but when you look at my record, you'll see a commitment to fiscal prudence, to adapting our resources to do what we need to do. You'll see a clear focus on academics, on building a sound, balanced education program for all of our students. And you'll see a person who's worked diligently for a school system the community can be proud of and part of, a community that has been my home and my pride since childhood. The schools belong to all of us. Let's work together to revitalize our school-community relationship and to make and to keep Westerville a strong educational leader for years to come. I ask for your support, and I ask for your vote on Election Day, November the 5th. Thank you.
As a community member for the past 8 years with 2 kids in the district and 1 coming up, I'm asking for your vote as well. We are, John, Luke, and I are running on a platform of putting students first. That means putting them ahead of all else and making sure that everything they need is funded, everything they need is excellent, and what we're bringing to them as an education as well is proven, it's approved by the community, and we've got a vision for where we're headed. We also talk about, we've talked to many parents who are concerned about safety. We also want to bring safety issues to the forefront as well. We want to support not just our teachers in their endeavor to be the best that they can be. We also want to support our administrators who have to support the parents, who have to support the teachers, who have to support the bus drivers. We've heard of too many issues where some of those have fallen down. We want to give them the tools and the ability to do that as well. Again, we talk about the student has to come first with a fiscal responsibility, bringing fiscal sustainability to this district, making sure that we're providing our kids a better education than even what they're getting today.
Okay. I'm a mom on a mission, and you know what a powerful force that can be. Students and their family in this district want and need, demand and deserve a voice at that table. I want to be that voice. I am qualified to be that voice. A voice for the kids that is heard loud and clear with each and every decision made by the Board of Education. But I'm not just a mom on a mission. I'm a taxpayer and a resident who has studied this district inside and out. Over the past 8 years, I've spent hundreds of hours volunteering inside our schools, working with our kids, and helping them advance. I've developed and created enrichment opportunities for students and worked with teachers and parents to increase student achievement. Simply put, I walk the talk. Residents who wish to govern our school district as Board of Education members should be well versed in all aspects of the district, not just district financials, crunching numbers, or looking at the bottom line. Our district is more than dollars. We are a people-driven enterprise. We are tasked with educating our youth, and as such, a board member should be active in our district and our schools while always listening and learning. I am that candidate. I'm a voice for the kids. I'm a person well equipped to move this district forward. I'm a mom on a mission to ensure that all students receive a solid 21st century education while guaranteeing that our community receives a good value for its investment. And that's why I'm your candidate.
Ladies and gentlemen, education is primarily about what happens in the classroom. It takes a good teacher, an interested student, and an involved parent. The school board's role is to provide the direction that makes the classroom function best. The school board must manage the district so the taxpayer can afford to meet students' needs by giving them a set of courses and extracurriculars that will allow them to compete at the next level, whether that be academic or career-oriented. This is deeply personal for me. I want my daughters to have an education that's better even than the one that I received. I want all the students of the Westerville School District to get a better education than their parents received. But we have a 40% remediation rate among our graduates who go to college. 85% of the operating budget goes to salaries and benefits. That leaves our children with only 15 cents of every dollar. And not even a full 15 cents because that has to be shared with other departments. Our kids are getting thrown the scraps. With the help of Jim Burgess and John Soth, I will reset the priorities of the school district to devote its full resources to making it the best it can be.
I want to thank you all for this awesome opportunity you've given me tonight. I've had a lot of fun. I've been very nervous the whole time. As you probably can tell, I'm banging the bottom of the table with my knee. But my closing words are these. If you're happy with the fact that we've become a divided community with a board that most feels not listening, that we have become the second highest district on operating and capital levies according to the dispatch, and number one in that same list in operating alone, and if you're happy with the fact that we're losing kids and dollars to charters, then I urge you to vote for the status quo. But, and there's always a but, I have a but for you. If you'd like, well, that came out wrong. But if you'd like to see change, efficiency, leadership that listens, transparency, innovation, restoration of some of the most hard-hitting cuts that we've seen and that have not come back at the passing of this levy just about 18 months ago, and if you want to see more technology in your classrooms, I ask for your vote today for November 5th. I promise to build the bridges that will work towards all these things that I've mentioned and I believe are absolutely needed in Westerville School District. And I invite you to join the conversation that I have on our web. It's edwardsforboe.com, shameless plug, and on Facebook at facebook.com/edwardsforboe. It's your vote, it's your voice, and it's their future. Thank you.
I guess that's me. Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. It's a thrill to have all of you with us, and I look forward to seeing you continue to stay engaged in our community and our schools. I think that's critical. At the end of the day, I'm thrilled to be up here to have this opportunity, and if the community chooses to let me serve again, I look forward to it. When it comes right down to it, I'm a dad. I've got 2 kids in the school. I've lived here for 32 years, and I went to these high school. I'm a businessman. Every day I go do something else, and I come here to serve because I think it's really important. And I have served for 12 years and quite honestly helped lead this district through challenging times, and I think we've had a lot of success, and I'm really proud of that success. If you look at the educational success we've had, we've improved every year since we've been here. It's quality education. We can do better. I absolutely believe that. We've been through some challenging times, and we are moving forward based on that. But when it comes to financial responsibility, the other side of the coin, as I said earlier, we have a 5-year forecast that is balanced for the next 5 years for the first time in the last 25 years. So let's use that and move forward to where this district needs to be. We focused on communication, but it's been outbound. We need to focus on engagement so we can come inbound. At the end of the day, I'm dedicated to doing things the right way, asking the tough questions, engaging the community. I would appreciate the opportunity to serve you again. Thank you very much for coming this evening, and have a great evening.
Again, I thank you as well for coming here this evening to watch us prepare our cases for election this fall. I'm running for the Westerville Board of Education because in the last 15 years in the districts, I've been convinced that I can offer my business experience to affect the positive change in the direction the district is going. Also, my years in the Air Force instilled in me a sense of public service being both an obligation and an honor. During the last 15 years, we have experienced large extra inflationary tax increases and reduction in both course offerings and student services. Just this year alone, we lost a number of technical courses, as I mentioned before, in our high school catalog and also at the middle school. Voters must remember, in the next 4-year board term, Westerville voters will be entrusting the board with the management of over $800 million in the operation of this school system. More business experience is needed on the board to efficiently manage those dollars for the benefit of students and taxpayers. We hire a number of great administrators to handle the educational process in the board. The board needs to work closely to manage the budget. I'm running in a combined campaign with Jim Burgess and Luke Davis because we have the business experience and plans to place the students first in the budgeting process and to begin returning course offerings to the catalog. Since the 3 of us are the only ones with publicly stated plans, casting votes for us is a way to effect the necessary changes in the way our district is managed. We are running together to offer the voters an opportunity to make a responsible change in the operation of the Westerville district.
I think it'd be real helpful at this time to say that everybody up at this table would like to put students first. So I think it'd be appropriate for nobody to suggest that they are more students first than the rest. The second thing I would like to suggest is that we are a district that has some division. We have some wounds. I have been a pastor for 33 years now, which means I'm always trying to do stuff that is really good with very little money. And I would suggest to you that there are 4 things I want to be about. 1, I want to maximize every student's inherent potential. Every kid has potential. I don't care what school they go to, what zip code they come from. They have potential, and we need to maximize it. Whether that's student first, a determined dad, or a mom on a mission. We need to be about students. The second thing I would suggest to you is that we need to have fiscal prudence. Absolutely. But we need to bring 21st century tools into the classroom now because we are already behind the 8 ball. Number 3, I would suggest to you that we need to develop a much more open dialogue and culture between the schools and the community. The rift has to stop. Whether what is set up here creates a rift or what is set out there creates a rift, the rift has to stop. And the 4th thing I would suggest to you is that we need to impact and influence the state and national legislature when it comes to education. Thank you.
All right. Nancy, yeah, let's hear it. You know, this is the greatest town in America, right here in Westerville, Ohio. We're the 5th friendliest town, according to Forbes. I don't know why we're not first, but we'll work on it. But I think that was reflective a little bit in this panel up here tonight. I've done a lot of forums, and many of them, people will immediately turn and take exception with something that somebody said and start to tee off on that, and you know, they can get a little unruly. I think tonight they did a wonderful job of presenting what their thoughts are without doing that, and I appreciate that certainly. You all had a chance to listen to them tonight. You got a sense of what they're about. Nancy, Jim, Tracy, Luke, Robert, Kevin, John, and Rick. You've all availed yourself very nicely here tonight, and I appreciate that. I appreciate also, of course, being asked to be here to participate in this very important forum. I want to pass along quickly to you that last night there was the City Council Candidate Forum, and there is a YouTube link to that if you missed it, and you can DVR NBC and flip over and watch this on YouTube. It was held last night, and it's posted on the Chamber website now. That's westervillechamber.com. And we hope that by tomorrow night at this time, the YouTube link for tonight's forum will also be found on that same website. Again, westervillechamber.com. And with that, I will now turn the podium to the chair of the Chamber's Government Relations Committee, Rob Twitchell, with important information. He is with the Information Control Corporation. Corp. C-O-R-P. I'm never sure quite what I'm supposed to say there. Corporation, Corp. What do you think?
Thank you, candidates. That was an awesome job you guys did, and I want to thank the audience, the community, for being here tonight. Every one of these candidates mentioned that they couldn't be successful without partnering with the community, and you guys showed by being here and asking tough questions that you're ready to partner with them, so good job. And please join me in thanking Cabot for being our moderator this evening. That Cabot has to get right back to do the 11 o'clock news and update us on the apprehension of the Energizer Bunny after
Yes, yeah, that's going to lead just ahead of the government shutdown and the health care program that's in effect.
So on behalf of the Westerville Area Chamber of Commerce and our forum sponsor, 2 Men in a Truck, we thank each of you for attending and for watching the forum on TV or video. Voter registration info is available on the registration table. We encourage you to exercise your right to vote on November 5th. This concludes the forum. Thank you and drive safely.